Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly reflections, where we talk about the decks I worked with throughout the month of May. So jumping into the first week of May, I was working with my Spacious Tarot again. This was a deck that I worked with the last week in April, and I was just really wanting to continue my work with this deck, so I went ahead and used it in the first week of May as well. So in readings with this deck, I find that it really creates some nice space, as the name says, to allow for your intuition to come through. So while it is based on, traditional tarot meanings, which is wonderful, it does open things up so that you have the ability to read things in a way that works a little better for you. Now, I have heard some people say that they've had trouble reading with this deck because it is so open and kind of airy. But I think that if you have a really good understanding of tarot, for the most part, I think that this deck reads beautifully. The book is wonderful, and it does have some great messages in it as well. But you can see here, like with this 10 of Cups, some of the cards are very pippish, which I particularly like, but I know that can be a real challenge for some people. And I totally admit, when I was first learning to read tarot, like pip style cards threw me for a loop. I didn't know what to do with them. There was no scene there to help me key into anything. And so now what I do when I'm reading with pip style cards is I tap into the numerological and the elemental associations of the card, and then I layer that, then I layer the imagery, the intuitive hits that I get from the imagery on top of that. So that's kind of how I work my way around that nowadays. And it's actually one of my favorite ways to read, which is why I really like a deck that is quite open. I loved this Hanged one. It's such an interesting and different perspective, right, of the Hanged Man. And I think it's really wonderful. It definitely is like a shift in perspective, right? It's taking you outside of the normal space, and it's taking you into this liminal area to explore things from a different perspective. And I think that's really wonderful. I really do like this Eight of Swords too. I love that there's no people in this deck. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the Spacious Tarot is there's no people. So for me, sometimes people takes me away from the deck, because then I start making like associations. Well, this person looks like this person, and that person looks like this person, and this person reminds me of my Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank has nothing to do with this reading. And so sometimes when I see people in decks, I have that kind of taking me out of the space that I'm in, taking me away from the context of my reading. And so to have a deck that doesn't have people is really quite wonderful for me, because it really does fall more in line with the way that I read tarot. I'm coming around to animal decks for that same reason, which has been really fun and interesting. Love this Ace of Cups. You can see here, you can see the mountain like coming through the cup. I think that's really wonderful. So yeah, just a beautiful deck. I've really enjoyed working with it. Look at this Justice card. I think that's really beautiful too. It's been a wonderful deck to work with. I will say that I love the size, and the cards are still a little bit stiff because they're new, but they do shuffle really well. So for the most part, I'm really enjoying tactilely working with this deck. Look at that star card. Isn't that beautiful? I love that star card too, because I live in the Pacific Northwest, so this card reminds me of home, and I love that. Total side note, but this deck does shuffle beautifully, and the cards look really wonderful laid out together. I love that it's borderless, because that allows you to, if you want to put them really close together and read this like a story, which is one of my favorite ways to really interpret my cards and to read, is to kind of read it as a story. And so I love the way this deck just works. I love the way it reads. It's got a bit of a calming nature for me too, a little bit like my White Sage Tarot actually. And the images in this deck, even though we do have, like, here's the Nine of Swords, a bit confronting, which I actually really like this depiction of the Nine of Swords. It really does have a very calm energy to it, which I quite enjoy. It doesn't bring a lot of esoterica into it, and I kind of like that. It's a little bit more nature-based. I have a lot of decks that are very heavy into the esoteric, which I really do like as well. But sometimes, and for some specific readings, I like to tap into more of that sort of natural kind of earthy energy. And for me, the Spacious Tarot really does that beautifully. It doesn't bring any undue energy into a reading. And sometimes I really appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why I really like the Anna Kay too, particularly for family readings, because it doesn't bring any of that heavy esoteric energy into it. I mean, granted, I love me some esoteric energy, but sometimes that's not what you need in a reading. So beautiful moon card too. I love the mushrooms. Beautiful deck. I've really enjoyed working with it. Definitely one I'll be working with again. And that is the Spacious Tarot. So in the second week of May, which was actually my birthday week, I used the Muse Tarot. And this is a deck that I think I mentioned in my Falling Off the Depth here video. So most of these decks, because they're new to me, were also in that video as well. This is a deck that I had the indie edition, and I ended up selling it as a bundle with my indie edition of the Lightseers. And it's just, that just wasn't a deck for me. I wasn't a fan of the cardstock in the indie version. And I know I'm probably like the only one who's ever going to say that, but it was too thick for me to work with, too thick for me to shuffle. And I preferred this. This is even a little bit thick for me, but I preferred this kind of thinner, more flexible cardstock. As you can see here, I still a little bit struggle to kind of get my hands around this deck and shuffle it. So it's a, it's a pretty chunky little deck even for the mass market edition. The backs are beautiful. I believe it's the same backs they had on the indie edition. I think it's the exact same deck. I don't think anything has changed. This deck is one that I really enjoy the artwork in, but I have found that for using it as a tarot, in normal traditional tarot readings, as I would normally do, like my daily, like my weekly readings that I do, where I usually do readings a couple times a week. And for me, this deck it really doesn't read well like a tarot. What this deck does for me is really taps into that wonderful creative energy. And I like to just pull one card, just a single card, to provide me with kind of a creative energy or creative jumping off point. For me, that's what this deck does. I've tried many times over the last month to read with it as a tarot, and it just doesn't work for me. I tried using the book and reading with it like a tarot, and that, I think, actually made it worse. It's a beautifully written book, but trying to use it as a tarot deck, that actually made it worse. So when I really thought about how I might want to use this deck, given that I do really like the imagery, and I really like the energy of it, but it just wasn't connecting for me as a tarot. So I thought, well, this is a highly creative deck, right? And it's called the Muse Tarot. So how about if I use it as a muse? So a lot of times what I've been doing is using it in terms of my creative projects, which is more where I'm finding that this deck works really well for that. I don't pay a lot of attention to the associations, the traditional tarot associations. What I am finding that I do is using it in that capacity. I do go back through and I read what's in the book, because what's in the book is very beautiful. It's very poetic, very creative. And for me, that really helps kind of tap into that creative energy. And I'm finding that this deck really works as a wonderful shift into that space. The kings are all sideways, which is was not my favorite in trying to work with it as a tarot. Every time a king came up, I was like, I don't know how to put this on my table. I was like this, but it's supposed to be positioned right here, and whatever. It was just a thing. But when it comes up now, because I'm only using it for one card to pull for a creative gateway or a creative portal into my creative space, if it comes up with a king and it's sideways, it doesn't really matter because I'm only working with one card. But that's my super long spiel on how I'm using the Muse Tarot, because like I said, it doesn't read well for me as a tarot, but as a gateway into creative space, it works beautifully for that. It does shuffle quite well. I'm probably going to edge it, even though I don't really use this like a tarot deck. It's still fun to edge it. I kind of want to do, I think, some pink green thing, and some layers maybe. But I'll just lay a few cards out here so you can see how they work together on the table. So here we go. Now what do I do with this? Now it's got to sit this way. So that's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's a quibble with this deck because I really am enjoying working with it in the way that I'm working with it. And even though it's, you know, technically a tarot, it has all 78 cards. I'm just finding that using it, pulling one card for a creative prompt is really where this deck is shining for me. And so I'm, you know, leaning into that, and that's what I'm going to do with it. It's a beautiful deck. I love the artwork. It's got that kind of photo collage-y type of thing going on, but oh, it's done so beautifully. I mean, this is seamless, beautiful photo collage. It looks beautiful. It's perfectly executed, and I think it's just wonderful. So I've really enjoyed working with it in that sense. It definitely taps into something creatively for me, and that's just absolutely wonderful. I don't have a lot of decks that I could say I use strictly for a creative process like this, so I'm actually quite thrilled to have one in my collection to do that with. So that is the Muse Tarot. So in the third week of May, I used the Forager's Daughter Tarot. And again, I believe this is one I talked about in my Depthier video, or my falling off the wagon for Depthier. This deck does come with a book, but it's a larger book, so I just didn't pull it out here. But I actually prefer the larger books. They're easier for me to actually read. So it's a beautifully produced book, and I do really enjoy it. This deck has gorgeous backs to it, very simple. It has the rose gold metal gilding. But I think, as I mentioned in my other video, it's like really nice gold gilding or really nice metallic gilding, and it doesn't really hurt my hands. So I've completely left it because it is beautiful. It's just normally that gilding cuts into my hands, and this one, it really doesn't. So I've kept with it. This is another one of those animal decks that I'm just really finding that I guess I've just really found my groove with the animal decks. I'm really enjoying working with them. I have quite a few of them now. As I mentioned with the Spacious Tarot, you know, they don't have people. And so that's actually easier for me to work with because, like I said, I'm not seeing Uncle Frank. I don't know why I keep saying Uncle Frank. I don't even have an Uncle Frank. Like, why do I keep using that name? I don't know. Anyway, this is just a gorgeous deck. This is one that was on Kickstarter. It is an indie. I do believe it's out of print at the moment. But I think I saw they are going to be gearing up for another reprint, I do believe. I will leave a link in the description box below. But this is one I saw on Kickstarter. I did not get it through Kickstarter. I bought, they had a couple copies, or I don't know how many, but they had some copies extra to sell, and they had a pre-order for those. And so I jumped on that pretty much the day I think it was available because I kept seeing pictures of this deck, and I thought that's an animal deck that I really, really like. I love the colors in it. It's just, I think that's part of it. The colors in this deck are absolutely stunning. And I really like the imagery. I really like all the cards in this deck. There's only a couple of cards that really kind of, I wouldn't say give me pause, but kind of like, oh, I think it's the Three of Swords. I'm not going to go through it, but anyway, it's a beautiful deck. I really enjoy working with it. I've gotten some really great readings from it. I am going to kind of transition here real quick into the other deck that I've been working with. And this is the Spirit Animal Oracle. And I'm going to transition here these together because I actually did a couple readings with these two decks together. And it was just really beautiful. So I thought we'd just maybe pull these out here so we can kind of take a look at these two decks together. I have been using the Spirit Animal Oracle in my wellness practice, and I speak about that more on my other channel because that's not necessarily a tarot thing. It's more of a wellness practice meditation thing. But these decks together, they're just, you know, they're like they're made for each other. I really enjoy working with these two together. So I use the animal spirits with the animal and the little tag. I love the book too. The book, the oracle message in this is really wonderful. I've quite enjoyed working with that as well. But I use this as kind of like the foundation or the main message, and then the tarot deck to help me expand upon that message and to really dive deeper into it. So I think it's just a wonderful combination. Again, I think I talked about both of these decks in my depthier video. So they are, yeah, two gorgeous decks. I've been working with this one every single day because, like I said, I've been working with it in terms of my wellness practice. But occasionally I've been pulling it into readings with my Forager's Daughter Tarot too. I love this Wombat card. Be at home. Yep, that's what we all need to do right now, right? Be at home. So that's my little derail into another deck that I've been working with. So that's the last two animal decks that I worked with in May, the Forager's Daughter Tarot and the Animal Spirit Oracle. Both two wonderful decks that I have really enjoyed. And the last tarot deck that I have to show you today is the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot, and this is a deck I've been working with in the last week of May, and it has been just a pleasure to work with. I love this deck. It's beautiful backs. I've mentioned it before. I love Dame Darcy's artwork. It just has this fantastic energy to it that I just really love. This deck is with its kind of muted color palette and its really soft, kind of old papery borders. Again, if you're going to put borders on a deck, make them intentional. It's so beautiful that way. And again, with the same as the Forager's Daughter, the text is all worked into the artwork in a very creative way, and I really appreciate that. I think that's absolutely beautiful. I love when deck creators actually work all of the elements that go into a tarot together into the artwork. So when the border is intentional, when the text is intentional, I think that's really gorgeous. It just shows a whole nother level, I think, to the deck. This is the one card in the deck that really kind of makes me go, ugh, every time it comes up. And I think it's really just her face, but man, she is determined, right? She is determined. But this deck is just really beautiful. I've really enjoyed working with it. I'm also working a lot with the Dame Darcy Queen Alice Tarot, but I'm doing something a little bit different with that. This 10 of Swords here, I think, is actually, even though it's the 10 swords in the back, like at least it's not all bloody and stuff, so I can work with it. Not that I can't work with the bloody ones too, not my preference. But anyway, this deck, yeah, it's just beautiful. I've really enjoyed working with it. It's definitely one that I think I'm going to continue working with into June because I'm just kind of loving it. I'm digging the mermaid energy. I'm digging the ocean energy right now. It's coming into summer, and I'm just really feeling that call to that sort of energy, and that this deck just really taps into that for me. And it kind of taps into a little bit of that childhood energy too, right? Like I don't know, just for me, the mermaids, it kind of makes me think of like my childhood and things of that nature, which is a lot of fun and I quite enjoy. We all need to be reminded to maintain that childlike innocence sometimes, right? It does have some nice kind of antique-y like gilding, which I think I mentioned matches like the frame here on this picture, which I think is really cool. So yeah, another deck I've just really enjoyed working with. The box is really cool. It's a nice box. You know me, I don't often keep my decks in boxes, but when they come in boxes like these, they stay in them. So that is the Dame Darcy's Mermaid Tarot. And real quick before we wrap things up, I just wanted to share with you guys a couple of the other things that I got in the month of May. I purchased these wonderful mists from Modern Metaphysica. This is the Cleanse Metaphysic Mist and the Inspire Metaphysic Mist. These are wonderful. I use the Cleanse. I use them pretty much daily. I don't know if you're supposed to use them that much, but I kind of do. So I use the Inspire every morning when I come into my office and I'm ready to do my work. I give a little spritz of the Inspire just so I have that kind of, just give me that little boost of inspirational energy. This is an uplifting blend of bergamot, myrrh, sweet orange, and carnelian. So they have, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's little crystals in there. These smell wonderful. I wish we had like smell-o-vision so that you could smell them. That one's gorgeous. Like I can even smell it from here. Although my office already smells like it because I already sprayed it this morning. And then I use, at the end of the day, I use the cleanse. So when I'm done like working for the day, when I'm ready to leave my office, my space, I give a little spritz of this to just kind of cleanse the energy, cleanse the air. And this is a cleansing blend of sage, rosemary, palo santo, and amethyst. And I do want to say real quick that these were not like sent to me for review or anything. I purchased these because I wanted to use them and incorporate them into my practice. If you are like me and you have issues with the smoke and the sage and things of that nature, give Dustin's little sprays a try. They are awesome. The other thing that I found, and I found this just like going down a rabbit hole on social media. I can't even tell you how I ended up with these, or on the page for these. But these are runes. And I'm gonna, sorry Dustin, I'm gonna move your sprays out of the way for a minute. And they are from Forge of the Phoenix, and I will leave a link below. But these are handmade runes made out of vintage china, and I think you can see here the runes are etched into the plate, and then with their painted gold, and the sides are all sanded down so they're nice and smooth, and they're painted gold, and they're made out of these vintage plates. And these are just like, this is my first set of runes. I have a book, I think, yes, somewhere. I've also ordered, Nina at Shuffle Tarot created a rune deck and a book, and I've got both those on order. They have not yet arrived at the time that I'm filming this. So then those came out. She released those the day I got these. So I was like, I think that means that I need to start my rune study here soon. But I think these are absolutely beautiful. I love the look of them. They feel like me. Like, they feel like my aesthetic, right? I was looked at them and I went, they match my everything. So, I was really thrilled when I found them. They are handmade products, so I will leave a link below. I had talked to the creator of these, and I know that she's making more of them. So, if you're interested, definitely go and check that out because I think they are just so cool. So that was like these two things. My favorite finds for May so far, for sure. Other than, of course, my decks, because I always love my decks. And so the last thing, I take that back. I have one other thing I want to show you guys. This is, look at this little cauldron candle holder. I have two of these now. I will leave a link for this as well. These were a find on Etsy, and then I purchased some of these little candles with the crystals and the herbs in them. I think this one is the Freya candle. I'll try to remember to leave a link for that too. Again, it was my birthday in May, so I had some extra, I had some gift cards and things of that nature, so I was able to get a couple of extra things, but I just think these are so cool. She makes them in black and white. They are hand painted and everything, so that's just really cool. I just want to share that too. The last little thing that I want to share real quick is I have been playing with making like, I guess it's kind of like prayer beads or meditation beads. I made this entire thing myself. I ordered all of the different beads and the metal hooks in between, and the little pendant here. I printed out the picture myself, put it all in here, mounted it, put it all together. She's got, this is of course Mother Mary, and she's got, I put a little Divine Feminine charm at the bottom and a little crown for the Queen of Heaven and the Divine Feminine on both sides. And then it is made with garnet beads and peach moonstone. And this was actually, it was a lot of fun, but it's a lot harder than it looks, because you basically take all these little, they call them like eye hooks, I think. No, pins, eye pins. And it's basically just the hook at one end with the straight line. I should have got one out here, but maybe I'll do a video if anybody's interested on my other channel. But you basically have to create each of these little pins and beads by hand. And then once you have them all created, then you hook them all together, and it's a lot of work, actually. It was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I have so much of this stuff now, so I think I'm gonna have to try and maybe make some of these for you guys if you're interested in it. I have some that I want to make for some goddesses and things of that nature as well. And it was a lot of fun, but it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. I had to actually watch some YouTube videos on how to get these little links together and how to actually make the little loops, because like I said, it's a lot harder than it looks. But I really love the way it came out. I think it's beautiful. I hope you all had a wonderful month, and I wish you many blessings moving into the next. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.